Ahoy, everyone. My name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Joe Wright, and today we head to points west with his third film, The Soloist, and learned if music can truly save us. Nick, how you doing today, my friend?
I was finally overhearing the phrase points west over and over and over again, and then you just brought it back, and so I need to go decompress for a little bit.
Yeah. As always, it is with our show, not always, but as it is many times with our show, when do you think it was the last time two people sat down and talked about The Soloist?
That's a great question. I would say sometime in 2009.
Yeah, probably, right? 2010? To be generous, yeah. 2010?
Maybe 2010. I was going to say before the movie actually came out.
Yeah, probably.
Well, one thing about it that we should mention is that it was supposed to be an award season release, like most of Joe Wright's stuff that he's done thus far. And it got pushed back to spring. The studio said it was a financial thing. I guess they had some other stuff going on at the time. And I mean, maybe they took a look at this one and thought this probably isn't going to win any awards, so let's push it back a little ways. But yeah. So I think maybe that was talked about. Maybe that was the conversation about The Soloist in 2008, the end of 2008. And then in 2009, when it actually came out in the spring, I don't know that it was talked about too much at all. I will tell you, it was a very strange experience for me because I feel like I saw this movie in the theater. I remembered bits and pieces of it, but like watching it a day ago, I just couldn't. Like, it was like a memory that wasn't there kind of thing, right? Like, yeah. I'm pretty sure I saw this in the theater, but like, I couldn't tell you if I actually did or not. I meant to ask my wife. She would have been with me, but I'm imagining if I don't remember seeing it, then she doesn't remember seeing it, and we probably did. But I think that says something kind of interesting about the movie, actually.
Yeah, that it's a very forgettable movie, I would say.
Right, but that was a long way of saying it probably is, because you and I, particularly at the time, right? Like we don't get out to the theater as much as we used to, and we got to pick and choose a little bit more now. But back then, I was seeing everything, and these are two actors that I really like a lot, and a director that I loved Atonement, and I couldn't wait to see what he did next. So I have to imagine I did go and see this, but there's just no recollection of it whatsoever. Like I didn't remember, and that was good. Again, it's always kind of like seeing it with fresh eyes, and I feel like I kind of did, but yeah, it's not quite up to the standards of excellence that we've seen thus far from this director.
No. So The Soloist, like you said, it's a 2009 movie, right? It's based on a 2005 set of columns and 2008 book by Steve Lopez, who is an LA Times columnist, and it's adapted by Susanna Grant. So it's 2008 the book comes out, and 2009 the movie comes out. 2008 the movie's supposed to come out. So this is one of those situations where, I'm imagining the book was optioned basically as soon as it was greenlit, by the publisher. Essentially, they're like, "We're going to turn these articles."
It's an LA story, LA Times columns.
Yeah,
it's very Hollywood in some sense.
Yeah, so I'm sure that I guess people already knew the story obviously because it was a collection of columns made into a book. So a lot of times in Hollywood this stuff will happen, right? Somebody will get a treatment for a book, a producer will get a treatment for a book, or they'll get an advanced copy of a book, or they'll know the person who's writing the book, and they'll option the book basically before it even gets to the point where it's finished, right? So that they have first rights, right, to the book. And I'm sure, back in 2008 and, I'm guessing 2007, whenever 2006, whenever they actually were like, we want to make this into a movie. I'm sure their eyes lit up with like, oh, this is a perfect Oscar movie, right? It's two big parts for two big actors. It's got a very showy performance for one of those actors. It deals with real issues and real tough stuff. So we definitely want to put this into that pipeline, right? Interesting, right? Because it's co-produced by Working Title, which is usually making British films. Especially at this time, it's Joe Wright has worked with them twice. At this point. And they're the producer on this film as well, which feels like a distinctly American production, right?
It's such an American movie in ways both good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, we should say, like, this is something that happens a lot. Like I said, like, one of the most famous people for this, right? The guy who wrote the book that The Social Network is based on, which is like Ben Mankiewicz or whatever like that. He takes it even a step farther where he just kind of like has a title and he's like, look, I'm writing a thing about this. And the book gets bought for millions of dollars by Hollywood even before he even writes a page of it. And really the book is not kind of secondary, right, to the movie. It's the book is created to make a movie out of, not like, oh, this was a great book and we made a movie out of it. Like, that's, you know, Hollywood works in very weird ways when it comes to books. It's a lot different now, obviously. Like, we've talked about this many times. There aren't as many high profile movies made out of previously published novels anymore. You know, it's not the sort of pipeline that it used to be. Obviously, comic books have replaced a lot of that at this point where we are right now. But back in this era, it was still a major thing that was continuing to happen, right? I think last time we talked about the great 2007 year, right? And, you know, the year of No Country for Old Men and stuff like that, which obviously based on very famous books. So, but this tells the story of Steve Lopez, who is an LA Times columnist who comes across a mentally ill, basically prodigy of a cellist on the streets of Los Angeles, played by Jamie Foxx. His name is Nathaniel Ayers. And he essentially sees him and decides to write a column about him, and then gets very involved in his life, eventually leading to him, you know, getting to play in front of people and sort of get his gifts recognized, all while kind of battling this mental illness and also Steve's own life issues and his inability to commit and to do enough and all of the type of things. It's a very simple plot. You know, there isn't a lot. One of the problems with the movie, there isn't a lot of things that really happen in the story, you know, and so it really is those type of things that happen. It's all told from the perspective basically of the columnist, which you would expect, right? Because it's based on the columnist's works. But I think it's one of those movies, right, where I feel like when you look at it now, you're like, maybe we should have picked a different perspective, you know, for this movie other than this, you know, upper middle class to wealthy guy who writes about people who are disadvantaged. You know,
he has the nicest house with the nicest view of Los Angeles. I mean, this is quite a while after it happened that people will actually be hearing this episode. Mm-hmm. I know in the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing about the fires in LA and how much of that city has been destroyed by that. And I don't know like the geography of it. I've never actually been to LA, so I don't know what's situated exactly where. But yeah, he's, as you said, this very sort of well-to-do character, you know, there is a little bit in this movie. I thought it was kind of interesting, and I'm sure I would have. I was working in the newspaper industry at the time, and this is like right at that sort of breaking point when it all started going digital. The older subscribers were kind of dying off, and the industry needed to reconfigure itself, and really still hasn't figured out a great way to do that, right? I mean, we're still, you know, now you've got billionaires buying up the major papers because nobody else wants them. You know, a lot of little internet like patch.com, stuff like that all starts up and gets popular around this time. Then that all kind of dies out too. So it's kind of an interesting period to make a journalism movie about, but this isn't really a journalism movie. No. And I think one of the biggest problems, and you know, the point I was going to make was this was still a time when you could be like a celebrity journalist and have a really nice house. And, you know, there's very little of that anymore, right? Like you're not going to be making money doing what Steve Lopez did at that level, not to the same extent anymore. But yeah, he's not very interesting of a character, and they invented some stuff for the movie. Like he was happily married at the time in the movie. He's on the outs with his ex-wife, who was also his editor, which seems like, you know, a very Hollywood contrivance kind of thing. Luckily, they got Catherine Keener to play her, so it's always nice to see her in a movie. She gets like one scene where she gets to do something kind of interesting, even though it's totally incongruous with the rest of the movie. But you know, I'm not going to ask for less Catherine Keener.
No,
ever.
Give me more Catherine Keener, for God's sakes.
But I'd say the same thing about Robert Downey Jr. and Jamie Foxx.
Yeah.
And we sure do get a lot of them in this movie.
There's a lot of Jamie Foxx in this movie.
Oh, yeah. But not, again, still not enough, because it is from the perspective of this character who's kind of like a piece of cardboard. He, like, that's not to discredit the performance. I think Robert Downey Jr. is great in this movie. He's given it 110%. There's so much, like, I think one of the things that helps me with the schmaltziness and helps me with just the, like, with a different cast, this is a Lifetime movie. And every way, you know, you could think of that negatively. But because Robert Downey Jr. is able to bring a little bit of that Robert Downey Jr.-ness to it, the quips, the one-liners, that sort of quick wit that he has. I mean, this is not really the project for it. I don't think it works better in something like Iron Man, which came out the year before that. Well, I mean, the year this was supposed to come out. Right? It was summer of 2008.
Yeah.
But boy, is it a good thing that they got him to be in this movie. I don't know if I could have sat through 2 hours of this if it was somebody else, somebody just playing this completely straight.
Yeah, and I think I wrote this in my notes, is like, do you know how lucky this movie is that it has him in this part? Because anybody else, and I'm not even saying, I'm saying other good actors.
Sure. Yeah.
Would have made it. He would have been an interminably boring character, because he really has not much to do other than just sort of like walk from place to place and do some voiceover and talk like very high-mindedly about the feelings he gets when he watches somebody else have feelings, you know, like that kind of stuff. But, you know, those little moments.
There is a lot of that. Whoa. Yeah, you're right.
Two things that Downey is so great at, right? We mentioned the kind of, you know, the quips, or I think just being able to feel like he's saying the words he's saying for the very first time, right? That he has such a skill at doing that, you know, and such a skill at making you feel like he's really living in the scene that he's in, right? Whether that, usually that's from a humor perspective, right? But the other part of it is he's got the most expressive eyes of maybe any actor who's ever lived. You can just live on his eyes and you can see every emotion, and you can see his eyes do this thing, which, and I'm sure it's just how, like, it's probably from just being who he is in real life, but it's like, you can see through all of the outer shell of quips and funniness and, you know, quick-wittedness down to, like, into his soul, it feels like, when he really gets that, like that very emotional, sort of glassy-eyed, like, you're just, like, in there, right? And he's so good at both those things. So he almost sells some of these scenes that happen. I will not say he makes them work, because I think they're almost impossible to make work in some instances, just because of the perspective of this movie and sort of the, you know, at times just, I think, kind of like patronizing nature of the way this movie deals with homelessness and, you know, being a person of color and being a mentally ill person. You know, there's a lot of like times where it almost gets to, I shouldn't be here. I'm a fraud. Like, I shouldn't be the one telling the story. But it always kind of goes like, no. He's a really good guy who's just trying to do the right thing. You know, so like it can never really fully commit to the idea that it's kind of full of shit. If it had really kind of embraced that, I think it would have been a whole other movie in a really interesting way, right? But it never does that. And so you can't really ever sell these scenes, but he gets so close. And there are these little moments, like there's a moment where he's like in the homeless shelter and he's talking to like a real, I'm assuming these are some of the real, like, you know, homeless people that from Los Angeles that are in this movie.
Yeah, very neorealism thing that they did here, which we haven't seen in a while. You know, these like Ben Affleck did that a lot, cast actual locals from the places he was shooting in. And, you know, that's that had to be something for Joe Wright, you know, that this is his first like American movie, and he's in LA, this very American sort of city. And yeah, he's working with non-professional actors. I mean, they're some of the most interesting people in the movie. And
for sure.
They give it some grit and verisimilitude that like almost nothing else does. So, you know, it like, I hope they were paid well, though. I mean, that's the other thing. You mentioned, right? Like, you know, this sort of like white savior thing that's going on through this whole movie. And, you know, I'm not always like looking for that stuff, right? Like I always say, like, I'm not looking for something to be offended by. No. But there's moments of this that make me feel a little bit uncomfortable you know, for these people, for this movie. Like, it is such a glitzy Hollywood thing. And it is like really making these big melodramatic swings. And, you know, for me, I mean, I'll lay my cards on the table. I didn't like this movie, but there are parts of it that I thought worked really well. There were one or two moments that got me pretty good. And I will talk about those. There was two that really jumped out at me. I liked both performances. I thought were very, very good. But like, if this movie could have leaned in, like it could have been a much grittier, darker, could have almost done like an Ace in the Hole thing, right? Like this idea of, when you are writing a story, like he mentioned it, like we kind of pay lip service to the idea, like, is Steve taking advantage of Nathaniel? And, because we're supposed to love these characters so much, like it's always going to side on the side of no.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
He is doing the right thing, and he's helping. He does learn a lesson. Like he doesn't know where he arrives at the end of the movie is not to not help. It's just to help in a different way, right?
Yes.
It's your intentions are good, and you just need to like course correct a little bit. If there was a little more of a sense that like maybe what he's doing is totally wrong, and maybe he feels a little guilt about it, and like that could have been an interesting movie. And then I think some of the other stuff, the grittier, more sort of down to earth stuff, like we're with these homeless communities in Los Angeles, I think that stuff would have hit a lot harder. Or it could have gone the other direction where you've got Robert Downey Jr., you've got Jamie Foxx, who is an incredible comedic actor. I used to, one of my favorite shows as a kid was In Living Color. And he came on that show in the later seasons and like created iconic characters. And if Jamie Foxx had only done comedy, like he would have had an incredible career and probably, there have been lots of memorable stuff anyway. The fact that he's also a very good dramatic actor and he's coming off of Ray at this point, I mean, awesome. I definitely a big fan of him. But if this movie had leaned a little bit more comedic, if this could have been, scale back maybe some of the pathos a little bit and reading a little bit about how this actually happened, right? Like there's invented scenes here that are very dark and very heavy and very dramatic, and they didn't actually happen in Nathaniel's real life. So it's like maybe this could have been more of a buddy comedy sort of thing. And I think it would have worked better that way. So like pick a side here, right? Pick an approach, and it doesn't really do that, right? Like it wants to have a little bit of both of those things, but also, like I said, take these big melodramatic swings, really reach for those Golden Globes voters, which was not a thing that this movie actually was able to do. It didn't
came out a little too early.
Yeah, it didn't
or too late, whichever way you want to put it.
Sure, I don't going to say too late.
Yeah.
But like you could kind of see a direction for this movie to go where it could have worked. It's a great story. This relationship between Steve and Nathaniel is really interesting and is really cinematic. But like every time this movie should make an interesting choice, it always kind of pulls back and makes just the boring, bland Hollywood choice.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think one of the things I want to just quickly before I forget to say it, the thing I was mentioning about Downey before is there's a scene with one of those homeless, one of the real homeless people who she's talking about this guy that she's with who has like pancreatic cancer, and she's going on this whole thing, and she goes on this like chicken story rant or whatever, and Downey just at the end of it like gives this laugh like to what she's saying and goes like, you're unbelievable, you're amazing. And it felt like that was just him really reacting what she was saying, right? It's like the genius of him is you don't know. Is that just like, did they just catch a take where Downey actually like reacted as Robert Downey Jr. or, was he just really in the moment as the character and he just, that laugh came out or he planted that laugh, but it just feels natural. That's what he's so great at. Unfortunately, for huge swaths of this movie, he's just really asked to be kind of somber and just sort of like go from one location to another location, right? Looking for Nathaniel, and then saying a couple of lines and walking away. And then we get these weird little moments in between where like he's buying like coyote urine, and he makes
the urine in this movie. It's like a recurring thing.
It feels like there feels like a lot of dropped storylines here, right? Like,
yeah,
because there's that. Yes. There's also the newsroom stuff where they're cutting newsroom people, and like Stephen Root's in this movie and he gets fired, and like, from the newsroom, and there's like, they go out and get drunk, and there's all this talk about them cutting all these jobs. And there's like, it feels like there was more of a newsroom like plot and like sort of like putting like what Steve is doing against, what's actually happened to the rest of the newsroom and sort of.
Right. And where does that fit in, right? Like, is he saving the media? Like, is this what journalism is supposed to be? Because nobody else is really doing that. And what about like, the hard news? I don't know. It's like, I think there's a lot of interesting issues in this movie that the movie just doesn't really want to take a stand. Like, you get to the end of a movie like this and it's like, okay, what is the perspective on the homeless problem that we're seeing here? And where does this movie sit politically? Like, not that every movie has to come out and say it, right? But this one seems to kind of want to have its cake and eat its too in so many ways. It's like you could make a statement about any of these things or avoid them. But particularly the urine thing seems really, he takes a urine test in one scene and drops the cup and slips on it. It's like this slapsticky moment. Like, what movie is that?
Yeah, there's that. There's the coyote urine. He tries to hang from the bag and it gets all over
and then
him.
He spills a bag of it all over himself. Like, I don't know.
And the thing is, like, the funny thing, those scenes have no place, right, in the movie.
Do you think R. Kelly is an uncredited executive
maybe
producer
it's
on
R.
this?
Kelly. But it's one of those scenes are like, oh, these scenes have a little life because Downey is just getting to do Downey stuff in them. You know what I mean? Like,
sure they do, but they don't belong in the movie.
I totally agree with you. You know, but, you know, when I'm watching this movie and I'm kind of bored, those, like, little blips, I'm like, well, at least that was kind of fun. You know, like, when we're going through all this other stuff. You know, I think, like... his whole sort of arc, like you said, they want to have his cake and eat it too, because it definitely wants you to be like, you really should be thinking about the homeless problem in Los Angeles and across the world. But then it's like, oh, and then it'll be like the scene where the cops come, like, kind of like ransack like the homeless encampments or whatever. And I'm like, oh,
right, and the one guy, they're like, we arrested him because he had a shopping cart and a milk crate. And he's like, you're going to arrest him for a milk crate? And you know, like,
did you write about this, Steve? Did you write about this in your column? Oh, right. and then he's like, but and then so there's all that, and then you go, oh, is this gonna be a little about that? But then once they find the blood splatter or whatever, you know, he from the other cop, he's like really polite to that cop, and then the cop sends him on his way, and then he's like, okay, I'm done with this part of the story. One point they bring in like the mayor of Los Angeles, who's like, we're gonna invest more money in this place.
Oh yeah, he's like the greatest guy ever. Then they go to this like fancy gala or whatever, and he's like, Steve wins an award there. So like, it's not critical of the government. It's not critical of the police. It's occasionally critical of this homeless this facility.
Yeah.
For mentally ill homeless people. Like the person I think he butts heads with the most, and I forget the character's name. I'm
looking it up right now. I wanted to talk about that actor anyway.
Yeah, really. He's one of the great supporting performances in this movie, and I don't know where I've ever seen him before.
So he's great in it. He's great as like the head of this LAMP, which is like the homeless community that's
and he's very, very well-meaning, and he has a very specific approach to how he wants to deal with the homeless. And Steve doesn't always agree with it.
Nelson Ellis is his name. Is the actor's name. He was in Get On Up, the James Brown movie. The
Chadwick. Yeah,
he's in The Butler. He's in True Blood. True Blood is, I think he's. Did you watch any True Blood? This is where I know him from.
First episode, hated it.
Okay, well, there's like
never watched anymore.
There's like a cook, like a fry cook at the restaurant that she works at, who's like a very big character in it named Lafayette. This is where I recognized him from when I was watching it. I'm just realizing.
Like I've heard of that character. He is. Like I do know a lot of people who really liked that show.
Yeah, major character. I mean, I watched like 3 episodes of that show, but his face. That's where I remember his face from. Basically, is from that. Okay. So yeah. It's also in an episode of Veronica Mars. You know, he's one of the guys kind of like, you know, bopped around a little bit. Anyway.
True Blood and Veronica Mars, 2009. What is
2009, baby?
Time to be alive. Yep.
I love Veronica Mars, but
I've never seen any of that. I'd probably like that.
It's early 2000s TV show that was on the CW and the WB, so you might have some stylistic issues with how it looks, but I got a lot of fun performances. Anyway, I think he's really good. Yeah, but he does really butt heads with him. But I do think that's one of the few moments where the movie sort of has the correct perspective, because the way that guy reacts to him is like, okay, man, like, you're just a guy who's coming in here for like a second. Like, oh, what should I be doing? Oh, what should I be doing? Really? This is what we should be doing? Like, I can't force him to take medicine, you know? And then there's this whole thing where, you know, Robert Downey Jr.'s character is like, well, what if I called the police and said he attacked me? And then he needs to be locked up. And he's like, don't do it, man.
They institutionalize him, and then they'll give him meds. They sort of force him to take it. And nobody really wants that. And I think even he realizes that's a bad idea, but he kind of gets dressed down about that. Like, there's some interesting, and like when this movie
actually attacks like 3 people and no one calls anybody. I just wanted to say that's such a weird thing for this movie to do. But anyway, go ahead.
No, like since you've brought us in that direction, it never really felt right for the character. I'm sure it didn't actually happen like that with the real guy. And I mean, it seems very like this movie doesn't trust its audience, right?
No.
Like it needs to do these sort of very traditional movie about mental illness things. Mm-hmm. And it's like, if we don't hit these beats, then people are not going to get this. And that's what really bothers me the most about this. Cause like I said, I am kind of moved by this story. Mm-hmm. And in the moments where it kind of like steps back from that, and we just kind of see real or realistic people having realistic conversations and just sort of, getting to know each other and stuff like that. I think some of that stuff actually works really, really well. But then, you never get to like immerse yourself in that, because then it makes like one of these, capital D dramatic sort of moves, and you're right back to where you started. Like all of those scenes where Nathaniel gets violent. There's another bit too. Like I like a lot of the flashback stuff, but there's this really, really weird moment where I think it's his sister is like walking down to the basement where he practices music, and she's bringing him soup or something like that. And like she's walking down the stairs, and it's shot exactly like The Conjuring or something like that. Like it's this real horror movie moment. It's like, and I guess that's sort of an approach. He is unpredictable. He's mercurial. He's dealing with, schizophrenia. He's hearing voices and everything. But it's like the way that's stylized and the way that's coded, I was like, that doesn't really work either. It's doing these movie things when it should just kind of like hang back a little bit and make things more believable, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like, here's the thing. We haven't really hit this point yet, but there are just some subject matter and movies and stories that some filmmakers just shouldn't be the ones who are making those things, right? And I think like an upper class British stylist who works mostly in period pieces probably isn't the person who's qualified to be doing the story about the mentally ill, homeless African-American man who lives on the streets of Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Like I
think that's a little unfair.
Dude, tell me what proof in this movie says that Joe Wright is the one who's qualified to make this movie.
Don't go by this movie though, right?
We're talking about this movie though.
I know, but you're saying it should never happen.
I didn't say never. I did not say never.
That's how you're making it sound. I think that's unfair.
I did not say never, but you can feel a complete detachment from emotionally and from this material from the filmmaker who's making it. This movie is much like we talked about with Atonement, right? Which is like, I'm going to put all the tricks on the plate and we're going to do a bunch of tricks, right? He does the same thing in this movie. And I feel like where in Atonement, I felt like those tricks worked, but again, give me a little separation. Here, I think they fail almost 100% of the time. There's like 2 or 3 moments that I think really, really work that he does a great job with. But other than that, I feel like just from a dramatic sense, when he's breaking out this movie, when he's blocking the scenes, when he's figuring out what he's going to do, how he's managing the performances, how he's deciding what scenes stay and what scenes go, how he's going to portray the scenes, even picking the project, I think he makes a lot of bad decisions here. Now, look, a British person can make a movie about an American and do fine and do right, but they've got to have some sort of perspective on that story that brings some sort of insight to it, right? And there is no insight at all brought to this movie by the director, right? It feels like an outsider. That's what it thinks. Everything about it feels like an outsider making it. Just like that scene where Steve walks into the homeless area or whatever when he's going to Lamp. You can feel from the director being like, isn't this like a gross place to be? Like you can definitely feel that in the filmmaking, And it's like, and then there's that scene later where, Nathaniel is like, I know you look at these people and they seem weird, but they're all humans and they're all going to dream. And Steve's like, oh yes, they are all humans. They are all going to dream. I'm like, come on. Like what? We need to workshop all of this just a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. So I agree with that, a lot of that stuff. What I will say, somewhat, you're not wrong. I would say the script isn't very good either. There's a lot of problems with the way this movie is written. And I think Joe Wright, like the way he sort of convinced Deborah Mogach to do things differently with Pride and Prejudice. It would have been nice if he had, and maybe he did, maybe
we don't know what those conversations were.
We don't know, but it kind of feels like, this, like she's a better known, she's the Erin Brockovich screenwriter. She's directed some films at this point.
She is, but Nick, we know who has the power when it comes to movie making. Unless you're Aaron Sorkin, like there is no writer who has more power than the director. The director chose this script and chose this project, right? So it's like, it's not like they were like, Joe, close your eyes and point to a script, and that's the script you're gonna do. He read this script.
It almost feels like that's what happened here.
It does, but you read the script and was like, this is the one.
But I will, before I forget, because you brought it up, those Skid Row scenes where Robert Downey Jr.'s character is just walking around there, they are so inconsistent. Like I don't know what it's trying to do. Like the first time he goes, people mess with him a little bit, like they would, right?
Yeah.
Like that guy, that very sort of white guy walking around down there, well-dressed, handsome. You know,
Yeah.
he does, his face is messed up. He gets in a bicycle accident, the opening scene of this movie, which is a nice little moment, actually. I liked that a lot.
Look, I think the first 15 to 20 minutes of this movie is actually pretty good.
It's good.
Look,
Yeah.
I got the first meeting
meeting between the two of them.
Yeah, I was like, is this movie good? And
Yeah.
then very quickly, I was like, no, this movie is not good.
Yeah, well, once it starts having to do some heavy lifting, it sort of loses me. But those scenes, because there's a lot of them, right? Like he goes down there a lot. He's always looking for Nathaniel. And the first time, it's like, okay, there's a little bit of tension. There's a little bit of danger here.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like everyone just kind of ignores him. And, you know, like he's just a member of the community now. And it's like, that could never happen, right? Like it's not the same people. So like, even if he won over a few of them, they're not always going to be there. And everyone else is going to be like, who the fuck is this guy? And we never see anything remotely like that again. I mean, if you're gonna like this movie, there's this one shot of a rat where Nathaniel sleeps. Other than that, you know, there's nothing gross or gritty, or, you know, he kind of just like hangs out in a doorway and sets up his sleeping bag and everything like that. And, you know, it's like that very Hollywood sort of, you know, we're pretending to be a homeless person here, and this is what they look like, and this is the kind of stuff that they have, and it's very, you know, simplistic and kind of lacks nuance, and like they could have done a little research. They could have made this just feel a little more true to life. But like, I think in those scenes particularly, it stands out because there's one that sort of does the thing that it needs to do. And then after that, it's like, no, we're just going to completely drop that thread too. He's a man of the people. He can just hang out wherever he wants and no one's going to threaten him. He parks this very nice car, like right in the middle of like this crowd of people with the windows open, and they're just like fine with it.
With his fedora on, walking around.
Go about your business, sir. Yeah. I will say I was a fedora guy for a while. This was the era, and I sort of missed that.
I mean, he looks good in it, man. I'm not making fun of the fact that he's wearing a fedora. It's just funny for him to put it on and walk around the streets, you know. Yeah. And then at one point he takes it off. He's like, "Oh, these people don't like that I'm wearing a fedora." And there's a moment, like there's that moment in the movie. But yeah, I mean, we can kind of skate. I'm sure we'll be able to get more into stuff as we kind of just go through the plot a little bit. So it opens with this accident that Robert Downey Jr. gets into, this bike accident where he kind of like just face plants on the cement or whatever. And that's where we're kind of given immediately that he is a columnist, right? And he's kind of writing a column about his own accident that he has. And, you know, it does well or whatever. And we get to like, he not only is a columnist, he's a very popular columnist. Like this is on like the front page of the LA Times.
Before we go any farther, like what does this character need or want out of life?
Because I think the movie is trying to give you this idea that like, you know, he's failed his wife. He's kind of not kind of a distant, you know, father. He, you know, the idea I think they're trying to give is like, he's a guy who, you know, is good at like the beginning parts, you know, of being like, okay, I'm here and I'm excited. I'm interested in you. And then once it's like, no, I need to depend on you. I'm out. Right. That's what they're trying to give you. But again, the movie doesn't spend like enough time character-wise
trying to portray him as a little bit washed up and a little bit like, you know, over the hill or something like that. But like, he's not. He's doing fine. No. And like, we know he's not losing his job at the LA Times.
No,
other people around him are.
Yeah.
Like Stephen Root's character. Like, what a waste of Stephen Root, by the way.
We got to see him sing though during karaoke. That was cool. But you know, like you said, Catherine Keener is like the editor in chief or whatever of the LA Times. He's a columnist. He's some other people who work with him. Once he goes to the hospital, then he goes to there and he's kind of a messed up face.
Jenna Malone's in this movie for
Jenna Malone is in this movie. I thought there was going to be some sort of like sexy time between the two of them. There was definitely a very flirty
or something. I thought she was going to come back because she was in Pride and Prejudice, and you know, she must have just been in town at the time. It's like, hey, Joe Wright, let's
very flirty scene to him and her and Downey Jr. She's got like this. She looks great. She's got like this like white blonde hair. Yeah.
It's like a goth girl.
Yeah. He goes to the newspaper, and this like scene in the newspaper office, again, I'm a sucker for these type of like scenes, but I thought it was pretty well done. Like we get a nice little like oneer in the newspaper office, but it's not like a crazy long one. It's just enough to give you a little bit of like a walk and talk kind of vibe, like a kind of vibe. This is a busy, bustling place. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of, you know, there's issues, but there's also like just fast paced. Like we got to get this, we got to do our jobs kind of thing. And
yeah, there's some really nice interplay with the reporters and kind of just going back and forth. And yeah,
that definitely feels like, and again, I don't know this. I don't want to take credit away from the screenwriter where it belongs and only knock her when it's bad. But you've got some people in the scene who you are good, probably are very good at improvising, right? Because I believe the other female reporter, it's Rachel Harris, who is a comedian. She was on The Daily Show for a little while.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. I like her. I always liked her. I hadn't seen her in a while.
Yep. You got Robert Downey Jr., you got Stephen Root. I can almost guarantee you that some of this dialogue and the way it's paced is just the three of them going like, let's just have a thing that we're going to do in here. Because we're not getting the movie together a lot, but like, let's make this scene memorable, and I think that really works.
Do you agree with me though? Like if this movie did kind of push a little bit more in that comedic, I'm not going to say like, this is not going to be a broad comedy, right? But this can be a movie that, has a little bit of that sort of comedic tone as it also deals with serious issues. Like it feels a lot like a missed opportunity, right? I mean, because
especially with these two actors, like you said, with these two actors.
And Catherine Keener's great with comedy also. And as I mentioned, Jamie Foxx is a great comedic actor. And you can make a funny movie that also deals with some serious shit and tells a real human story.
Yeah.
This doesn't really do it. But like, I mean, that's the more interesting way. Like you could also go way darker and way grittier with it, more realistic, more sort of, ground level sort of thing. I don't really want to watch that movie. Like I kind of want to watch the more sarcastic, like, fully embrace that you've got Robert Downey Jr. as the lead here. And let it kind of go in that direction. But am I wrong about that? Like, can you see in some sense that version of this movie?
I can definitely see that version of this movie for sure. I think obviously you got to be you make the tightrope even thinner when you deal with mental illness and someone like that and try to bring a lot of comedy to it. But I think it's obviously possible. But I do think this movie costs about $60 million to make, which is an insane amount of money for what this movie is. Which essentially, most of the time, it's two actors in like two locations, right? It's crazy that it costs that much money. Whatever, it's not my money, but it's just crazy that it costs that much money. Like, I think the serious sort of model for what this movie could be is something more like Short Term 12 or something like that, right? That is what that's how far you have to go the other direction to me for this to work in any sort of way, which is this movie should not be lavish and big. Like, it just shouldn't. This movie should be, and I don't mean it has to be super serious, but I feel like it has to, like the scenes where he's sitting there listening to play music, right? The first time he hears him play the music, it's like, Joe Wright's like, no, the music isn't good enough. Like we've got to show airplanes and skylines and these crazy vistas and like all of this stuff to kind of show you like what Downey is feeling or whatever when he's hearing the music.
A lot of very sweeping cinematography in this movie.
Yeah.
It really does not earn or doesn't need. I can see that in Atonement. I will say, though, the closing shot of this is so gorgeous.
Great. I mean, there's a lot of gorgeous shots. There's even just some shots where it's just...
But that's the moment, like, up until that point, it's like, okay, we know what you did with your last movie, Joe, right? Like, that is not the approach here. But in that moment, I think it works so well. It's just that it's the last shot in the movie until we get to some stuff, in inter-credit stuff.
Yeah.
But it's in the concert hall. We're with the main characters. Yeah. And then I'm a sucker for a very long dolly back. The opening of Clockwork Orange kind of thing. It's a very different scene from that. But like we pull all the way back to the performers that are on stage, the conductor and everything. And it just keeps going and going and going. It's a very, very, it's a long take. And I really, really like that. But there's too much stuff like that earlier in the movie that just doesn't feel like it should be there at all.
Absolutely. He's written this column. It's done well. Catherine Keener at the office is like, I want you to write this like serious story about like, poison in water. I don't even remember what the hell the story was about because it's like the last time it's actually mentioned, but they try to play it as like, he's got to figure out a story or he's got to do this story he doesn't want to do. And I'm like, this is not stakes. First of all, not stakes.
That's a real first worldly problem.
Yeah, exactly. So he goes to this, he's looking for a story. Right. And he happens upon Nathaniel in this like, sculpture garden or whatever. And he hears him playing and he's playing a violin with two strings. And it's the first time we meet Jamie Foxx's character. And Jamie Foxx really has like two modes as a dramatic actor. Right. He has like collateral mode where he's like very internal, almost quiet, very serious. And he has this mode, which is like actor on actor, like the most acting you can possibly do is Jamie Foxx. And I think this is a good performance. It is dangerously close to one of those type of performances where it's all mannerisms and it's all like, oh, my mind is so crazy, so I'm just saying all these lines and I'm, whatever. It's a crazy, it is a mentally ill person.
It's a little Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man.
Yes, exactly. And like, I don't know what the real Nathaniel Ayers is like, right? I've never heard him speak. I didn't do any research into it before we talked about the movie, because I didn't want to be like, well, it's not like the real Nathaniel. But, right. In the movie itself, it just sometimes goes a little over that line into, okay, I think you're going a little bit too much on the affectations of what a person like this would be like. Because when he's not going over the line, and especially those moments where there's clarity, it does have a nice balance of like, those moments mean a lot when he has clarity because of the other moments where he doesn't have clarity, right? When he's talking to
and
Steve.
He has this very interesting perspective.
Yeah.
He kind of understands himself better than all these people who claim to understand him. That's really the main sort of conflict of this movie is, unless you are going through what he's going through, you can't really see it from the inside. And he kind of sees it from the outside as well and understands that, I might be dangerous, or there's this thing. It's an interesting idea, right? Like he wants to live on the street because he's afraid to be like penned in, cooped up,
Right.
So like one of the big things in this movie, one of the big plot points is he gets an apartment, and that should be right. You would think that's what any homeless person would want, is just a roof over their head. And to him, that's like a terrifying thing. And it's interesting. And when he actually explains that in a scene where he is lucid, although, it is, somewhat of a part of his disorder that he wants to be in, or that he doesn't want to be inside. But when he actually explains it, it's like, oh yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. And he does have a perspective on this that's worth hearing. And I like that. I like those scenes a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, this is why I think the movie really needed to shift, I think, its perspective a little bit more in order to give us more of that and give us more of Nathaniel. Because if you're going to do the flashbacks, you got to commit to it, right?
Yeah.
There's only 3 of them. None of them are as long as you would really expect them to be when they get started.
And I want more. They're good. I mean, there's some of my favorite moments in there. And those are the moments when he's at Juilliard and he's performing, he's in a class and he kind of loses it right in the middle of a performance. And, he's berated by his professor in a very Whiplash sort of way. Yes. This is before Whiplash, but, that moment works, I think. You really feel for him in that moment. And the way he's schizophrenic, he hears voices in his head, and the way the film does it, I kind of liked, because they are weirdly not always threatening. It's not always this sort of ominous exorcist voice. I think I've seen, less nuanced portrayals of that in movies where it's just it always sounds like there's a demon talking to you, and it's probably not like that, right? It's sometimes it's people that you love. Sometimes it's voices that you're familiar with, but those people are not there. And we get a lot of that in this. And I think the flashbacks do a good job of just, kind of giving us a sense of who he is. I don't know if we're going to get to it, so I just want to mention there's this really, really, really great moment. It's the very young Nathaniel. He's at home. He's 13 or something like that. He's in his bed. None of this stuff has really happened yet. He hasn't developed the condition, or if he has it hasn't escalated to where it was. But his mom is kind of an interesting character. She's kind of this boisterous. She's a hairdresser and, clearly really loves him. She's passed away by the time we meet him in the present day. But she comes downstairs, and it's this nice little mother-son moment, this very tender thing. And she says this very cliched line to him. She's like, every time I hear you play, I hear the voice of God. And the son just breaks out laughing, right?
Yeah.
And it's what a stupid thing to say. I love you, but how cheesy. And I love that the movie does that, right? It's a very, very little thing, but because so much of this movie is so melodramatic and it is taking those big swings, you would think, when I hear you play, I hear the voice of God. That's going to be an earnest moment in this movie. And the fact that it isn't, I'm so on board in that moment. If the rest of the movie was a little more like that and could just have a little bit of a sense of humor about itself. Yeah. The way that moment does. And that's what a teenage boy would think if his mother said something like that. And it's not mean-spirited. He loves her clearly. And it's a lovely thing to say, but also it's very cheesy. And he acknowledges that. And I really like that the movie acknowledges that. Again, maybe grasping at straws a little bit, but that was one of it. So I was thinking about this.
Because the movie didn't say that at all.
No, but I love that. It's this nice. Again, I'm a sucker for these things. Going back to our first episode, it's a Jeff Bridges on Tron Legacy sort of moment, right? This nice familial moment that doesn't have to be there, and because the rest of the movie is not that good. The fact that we have this there, it suggests something, or it hints at something better. Maybe, like I said, like I've been saying, a better direction this movie could have gone in. I found that very, very endearing, that moment.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the flashback stuff is okay. I think, again, much like with the treatment of like the homeless population and stuff like that, it's a little too like precious about the fact that he's like a young boy of color. It's got a little bit of that like, oh, isn't it like sweet that he, that he wants to do all this stuff even though all the world's against him. It's a very like outsider perspective to this type of lifestyle, right? And which is where you can feel that everywhere in the movie, and I think it happens here as well. I do like the Juilliard stuff. I think that stuff works. The actual voice stuff remind me, there's a game that came out a couple years ago called Hellblade.
Yeah, I played a little bit of that. Yep.
Yeah, and it dealt with this, right, with the voices and how they kind of filled the person's mind, and it reminded me of that a little bit in how it was achieved. So like this sort of like schizophrenia plot and everything. We're right at 2000. It's interesting to think about this in a historical sense, right? Because in 2008, 2009, we're right at the end where Hollywood can kind of most of the time get away with this anymore. Like you don't see a lot of this stuff anymore. There's not a lot of like, like dealing with mental illness in this way. You don't really see like the classic like asylum stuff you used to see all before this, right? When it was very much like, I don't know, if we want to show someone is destitute or show someone is like it really, really had a really traumatic experience, we'll just throw them in a mental institution and and have them like drool and be shaking when somebody walks in the door. We're really at the end of that here. So it's just fascinating to think about that, right? Where this type of movie, not only based on the book, but just this type of like parable about someone who has mental illness, really we're at the inflection point almost of when this is gonna flip over.
Yeah, at least on this sort of big scale Hollywood stuff, Golden Globes bait sort of level. Yeah. Because you see a lot of that.
You see a ton of it, right? And that's so what happens when stuff like, Theory of Everything or whatever comes out, people are like, I don't know. There is, so anyway, I think flashback stuff works pretty well. Again, it looks really nice. It's got this nice sort of like different color palette to it and everything. It's a little bit weird because again, this movie is taking place in like the early 2000s, right? Basically when it's a couple years before.
But he goes to Juilliard in 1970. Like he should be a lot older. I think,
it's a weird time frame because like when he looks out the window of his house, I'm like, is this like 1940?
Late 60s? No. Someone mentions, the world is changing. I forget what the line was. Yeah. So like it does kind of situate it in that like late 60s, early 70s era. Yeah. But then Nathaniel, you see him, and maybe he just aged well, but like he's homeless. So like. He probably wouldn't look that good.
Jamie Foxx is probably too young, right, to be playing this part.
I'm just saying, part of it. We never really know how old he's supposed to be.
Yeah, because Jamie Foxx is this very young-looking person, like basically even now. 20 years later, basically, he still is a very young-looking person. So, I guess that was a little bit weird for me thinking about it because I was like, really, this is not the movie's fault. I'm bad with like when a movie's like, it's this year, and then it flashes back and it gives you the date and it gives you another year. My brain just doesn't hold on to those numbers. So I'm just like, wait, how long before is this than we were before? They mentioned like, oh, you haven't played in 30 years. At one point, Tom Hollander, who also is in this movie, another Joe Wright.
Another pious religious guy.
Yes, yeah. Because he's like, oh, for someone who's picked up a bow in 30 years. I'm like, so like he's 50? Because he looks like he's 32,
35,
whatever. So it's just that was a little bit weird.
You're right though. Like even if they made this movie today with Jamie Foxx, he'd still look too young.
Yeah, exactly.
Good on you, Jamie Foxx.
Absolutely. You need like someone probably like Denzel basically now looks probably as old in my mind as this guy was supposed to look.
Like I actually did see a picture of the real Nathaniel Ayers, and he looked a lot older.
Oh, okay.
It was contemporaneous from when this movie came out, and he looked like a senior citizen. But so I guess that doesn't really sell the Golden Globes focus.
No. So Steve writes this column about him. It does really. It makes an impact. This nice old woman sends her cello she doesn't use anymore. Gets to bring it to him, and this is how he kind of brings him to this lamp. This homeless community. he tells him like, I can't leave this out here with you. They're going to keep it there. You can just go there. And Nathaniel's very resistant or whatever. And this is when we get this big long scene, right, where Downey's character is waiting for him, and he's like talking to some of the other homeless people, and he's talking to the head of the community and all this kind of stuff. And while I think there is some good stuff in this scene as far as just like naturalistic acting from Downey, it's one of those where I'm like, this is like 10 minutes. We don't need this. Like, we don't need 15 minutes of Downey waiting for him to show up, for him to then show up. You know what I mean? And we get this moment where he's like, oh, listen to this. And, you know, you can hear him playing or whatever. But basically, you know, and the reason he wants him to show up is he wants him to write another column, right? He's kind of like, well, the guy who doesn't show up, that's not a column. So we get these scenes of him kind of like searching for another column, which is like, oh, he's talking to like the atheists who like bought a highway or whatever, you know, adopted a highway or what have you. Just, we get a lot of scenes that are just like, why is this the perspective that we're currently in? Like, I don't care about Steve Lopez looking for a story, so you just have to write the other story that his editor wants him to write. You know, like, it's just a weird set of stakes in this moment. You know, but we get, I should say, we've seen I mentioned before where Steve's kind of watching him play, and we're kind of seeing all these sweeping shots of Los Angeles and, you know, from above and all this stuff. It feels to me like in that moment, it's just like, if he's really that great at playing, we don't need all of this other stuff. In fact, it should be more of like that, like everything goes away, right? And it's just the music, which I think Wright gets right later on in the movie, in a couple scenes from now. But, you know, I wish it was just more sure of itself, you know, where it's just like, no, this music is going to be beautiful. It's going to sound beautiful, and you're going to understand why, you know, just with more simple filmmaking tactics, why this is so powerful.
I agree and I disagree because I think part of who Nathaniel is like, you know, the way he lives outside and plays music outside and, you know, considers himself like part of this bigger thing, like something that's much bigger than him. Like, he is the city, right? Like, the city is like part of his music, and when he plays music, it's like becoming part of the city. Like, he has this kind of interesting perspective on that. I don't think the movie does a very good job. Like, it's a very hard thing to communicate, I think, visually. But if we are just listening to the music and it's just, you know, a simple shot of him playing, I don't think we get, I mean, there's some like the plane going over, that moment where it's, you know, going over between these two overpasses, and we kind of see this patch of sky and the plane kind of cutting through it as the music is sort of very nicely counterpointing that. I actually like that stuff. And I think it does a little bit to sort of sell this idea about why he has to be outside, why he says, you know, he doesn't want to take the lesson inside. He wants to, like, why can't we just play here, like under this tunnel where I experience life every day, and like that is becoming a part of my music, and my music is becoming a part of that. I really like that idea. I think it's kind of clunkily handled, but I'm not sure that I want to see those scenes. I mean, there's some interesting stuff this movie does with music, right? Like when he finally takes him to the performance, right?
I want to talk about this. Oh, don't skip ahead to this, because I want to get to that, because I do want to talk about that scene. I agree with you, right? What you're saying about him, like his stance on how the music and the city sort of intertwine. When he plays for him in that moment, right? We haven't heard any of that yet. That happens later when he talks about that. So this scene, again, it's just one of those things where like this sort of idea of like, look how my music interacts with everything, right? In this scene where he's playing for Steve, we're in Steve's mind, right? Because we're in his perspective. We're feeling what Steve is feeling in that moment. So this scene should be like a scene later on where he's trying to like show him and tell him like, look, like just listen to me play. It's part of the city. It's part of the whatever. And then we see Steve realize that, you know. But
I think Steve's sort of feeling it in that moment. He just doesn't really know what he's feeling, right? Like it's almost contagious, right? Like you hear this guy play because look,
sure, I mean, but you're taking information from later in the movie and painting it back onto this moment.
I'm not, because like if you came across someone who is playing, like, you know, I've seen homeless people who are playing music like on a street corner or whatever. And, you know, it sounds good to me, but like, I don't know what makes a virtuoso violinist because I don't really listen to
of course
classical music, right? So you encounter something like that, and it's like, is it going to be a transcendent experience right away? Like, do you know? Like he you wouldn't have a sense that this person
But
went
they
to
play
Juilliard.
it as a transcendent experience, though. That's the thing. I just think this movie is unbalanced in the way that it does this stuff, because you can't, again, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have 6 scenes where everyone's transcending from the music. You've got to build to something, right? And I think like the moment later on, which he forces him to go to Lamp. He then gets him to go to this concert hall, right? He goes, I heard from this guy. He wants you to do this concert. And Nathaniel, knowing himself, says like, I can't do it. I'll make a scene, right? He says, what about a rehearsal? Okay, great. We get a pretty fun comedic sort of scene where they have to push the cart all the way to the concert hall because Nathaniel won't leave it at Lamp. I liked that. I like that's fun. It takes advantage of both of their strengths as, performers. And then we get the scene where, he's listening to them play, and first it like completely like blacks out, right? And then he closes his eyes, and then we get the music just in colors, right? Loved this. I was like, this is really putting me inside Nathaniel's head. It's really showing me how Nathaniel experiences music and experiences that feeling.
It's synesthesia, right? He hears music, he sees colors. But like this sequence, I mean, it's an abstract sequence in the middle of like the most Hollywood movie like imaginable. And like, here, let's do this avant-garde experimental thing. Like, it's like the midpoint of the movie, and it's a couple of minutes too. Like they don't cut right away from that. We see a lot of it, and it's, the music is good, and it really does kind of, it works thematically, it works for the character, and it's just interesting to look at because the rest of this movie has been very much, Hollywood actors in the most sort of traditional American movie location, which is the city where movies are made. So, I really like that moment.
Loved it. Like I loved that moment. I was fully in and engrossed in that moment. And I think that was really the time where my brain went, oh, this movie should be from basically Nathaniel's perspective the entire time. I don't think I was really thinking about it until that moment. I was always like, there's something off here. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is the juice. Well,
because up to that point, you want this to be that newsroom movie that it never becomes.
Exactly.
I kind of feel that way too. And it's like, oh, all right, this makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah,
like
totally.
We're not getting that, but we might get this. We don't really get much more of this.
And this scene, and then the scene that buttons directly next to it, at least like the first half of that scene where Downey's at the bar and, Steve Root's been let go. So they're having this kind of like, like karaoke out night drinking. The way Downey is talking to Catherine Keener's character about how he felt watching him, totally bought it. I was like, this I buy, right? And he's like, I've never felt like this before, and I don't love anything the way he loves music. And Catherine Keener's like, well, yeah, obviously that's true. And I'm like, come on, don't make this that scene. You know what I mean? Like, because they're really good together before that. That you can feel the chemistry. It's like, it's really, you can feel that they were in a relationship, that they care about each other, that they're attracted to each other, and it's like.
Yeah, he does the same thing later on. So they are, there's a moment late in the movie where like, it's, it's kind of that all is lost right before the third act sort of moment. It's a very, the structure of the script is pretty traditional. But she's sort of comforting him and they're together. And it's this really nice moment, like this estranged couple kind of just seeing each other, like, like they haven't seen each other in a while. But then it becomes a story about, this earthquake and their son. And it's directly related to the plot. Like it's just pushing the movie forward. Like, I don't really need that. Like, just let's sit and watch these characters for a little while. These two great actors.
Exactly.
Let's not have them say exactly what they have to say to get us to the next scene, to make that third act turn and get this movie over with.
Yeah.
Yeah. This scene, I forgot about this one, how much it does that too.
Yeah. And they sort of, they put this kind of character trait onto Downey's character in that last scene you're talking about. That it's like, she's like, you can't fix everything.
Yeah.
So I'm like, when has this character been trying to fix anything? You know what I mean? It never felt like that in the entire film. Like, it wasn't a defining trait of his character, right? And it oddly felt sort of like when he's telling that story about the earthquake and stuff like that. And it oddly felt a little bit like that scene in Destroyer that we really liked, where they're talking about going to the woods, and like, and didn't know what to do, and it lost. And that scene was much better than this scene that we're talking about. But it was a similar sort of structured idea, right? And it's like, again, they're very good together. They have chemistry. It's like, I like that they're like kind of an age appropriate couple. Like that's nice. Like all
Yeah,
that
I want to
stuff
see
is
them
really,
play a couple in a different movie.
Yeah, totally. I think they really work together, you know?
Yeah.
And Downey's really good as a reporter, right? He's a perfect actor to play a reporter, right? He played one in Zodiac a couple years before this, right? He's here now again. There's so much intelligence in his manner. Like you just feel like, oh, this is a smart guy.
He's a smart, scrappy, witty, you know, quick-witted guy. I mean, he's a great reporter. He's a great private investigator.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've mentioned that show. One of my absolute favorite movies of all time is Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
I think you mentioned that no less than 7 times, but yeah.
Okay. Well, it's one of my favorite movies and he's great in it. And
yes.
And yeah, that's, you know, it's a perfect sort of role for him. And he's doing a little bit of that here as well. I mean, they're similar traits, I think. You know, it's seeing things in a slightly different way from the way other people see them. And, you know, Robert Downey Jr., I'm never going to buy him as like a guy who can fight, but he's a guy who can kind of talk his way out of a situation. And
what about Sherlock Holmes, mate? He's so smart he can see where it's coming from.
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. He can beat a guy 3 times his size because, you know, he can just find that pressure point or whatever.
That was also this year, by the way, 2009.
I do like those movies. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Guy Ritchie's highly underrated. We'll get to him.
We may talk about him someday. I think he'd be fun one to talk about. I was talking about with somebody, and I was like, yeah, but you would have to do like some bad movies. And then I looked at his filmography and I was like, there's not really that many bad movies in there.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's some that I'd be less interested in seeing than others, but
yeah,
that's true of almost everyone. True of Joe Wright.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. So, you know, I love this scene in the concert hall. Then we kind of get this plot line where he wants to hook him up with this cello teacher, right? Played by Tom Hollander, who also is a religious fanatic.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that. It's never really explained, but like that guy really pushes God pretty hard.
Yeah.
More so than he does the cello. And that upsets Nathaniel, which I sort of understand.
Yeah. Well, because I think it's partly just to allow him to be like, no, Steve Lopez is God. I think that's part of the reason why Tom Hollander's character is so into God or what have you. But again, it's something where the movie almost gets at something, right? Where it's like, yeah, this guy would be like, no, I'm not going to praise God. Like, look at my life. You know what I mean? Like, look what's happened to me. I never did anything bad. I was always a nice person. All I did was work really hard, and look where I ended up.
Hollander's character says something like, this is a blessing. This is a gift. And you can't just let that go. And he's like, I'm not blessed. Like I'm look where I'm living, asshole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And I think like
I don't know. He says, I don't owe God anything, which I really liked.
Well, I really like that too. And again, it's just like, give me more of this, please. Give me more of this stuff in the movie. Then Hollander kind of pushes him to do a performance. And, Steve is almost like a passenger in that whole thing. Is like, well, I can't really force it, but I can call the guy from Lamp essentially. And then the next thing you know, there's a concert, right? And he hears voices again and he kind of beats up Tom Hollander's character
on stage in front of everyone,
and leaves.
Yeah. Talk about big melodramatic swings.
And, and then part of this too is like,
is that the worst scene in the movie? That might be the worst scene in the movie. Yeah,
it's one of the worst scenes in the movie for sure. Absolutely. And he runs away. And this is when Steve goes back to like the Skid Row and the cops are there and they're arresting homeless people and ransacking their kind of like their dwellings and where they sleep. And he's trying to track down Nathaniel. He's not at the hospital. He's not whatever. And he finally, he's kind of wearing half a tux or whatever because he has to go to this fancy awards, night thing or whatever. He gets an award for writing about Nathaniel or whatever. And, I thought in this scene, I was like, oh, we're going to see like the mayor's true colors now in this scene because he's going to bring up the police thing or something. And no,
the mayor seems like a pretty good guy.
The mayor's just like his Marco Rubio looking ass is just sitting there and like.
Yeah, he does. You're right.
And.
Yeah, and then Catherine Keener like gets drunk and embarrasses herself there, and it's like we've never seen that from this character before. Why are we doing this now?
But I did feel like Catherine Keener was saying stuff to him. I was like, I kind of feel the way Catherine Keener feels about you in this movie. But the movie hasn't given us any reason. Yeah, she's just doing this very broad drunk thing. She like knocks over a champagne bottle at one point. And it's like, no, it's too late to develop this character. Like you got other things to do. Why is she mad at him? Because he he's taken an interest in this homeless man, and he's
I don't
writing
really get
stories. I don't understand like what you're even really upset about. Like you guys are separated. You don't really have a romantic relationship anymore. Like what?
Yeah, and he's writing for your paper that you're trying to save, and people really like these columns, and he's like changing the face of the city with this work that he's doing. So it's like, maybe cut the guy some slack.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's like, if you want to help open him, there's got to be more scenes that lead up to this, right?
Absolutely.
Other than the one scene where you just get mad because he says Nathaniel loves music more than he's loved anything in his life or whatever. And like, that's just something people say about stuff. Like, what are we getting so mad about in this moment? You know, it tries to do, like you said, all of the very stereotypical, Hollywood moments and structure. But it's too unwieldy for those things to at least be like, okay, this is like a gentleman's six. Like, yeah, it's predictable and everything happens the way I thought it was going to happen. But it's like a really solid, focused thing. So, it's watchable. You know what I mean? It's too unwieldy, for that. Again, he said, it never really settles on what we're supposed to care about. What are the stakes? Because it never really even goes like, okay, if this doesn't happen for Nathaniel, then X is going to happen. Right? Because the only threat to Nathaniel continues to seem to be Steve, where Steve's like, you're going to sign these papers and they're going to say that you're schizophrenic and you're going to get put in a home or whatever. It's just like.
And like, maybe it's me and maybe I missed it, but like, is Nathaniel that much better off at the end of this than he is at the beginning? Like, he is comfortable where he is. And it's like this whole thing that Steve does is like, you're forcing him out of, where he feels safe. Like, he's learned to live on the streets in a way where like, he's not getting taken advantage of. And he's got all his stuff kind of organized in a certain way. And it's like, no, I'm going to force you to do this, this, and this. And it's like, I'm going to give you these opportunities that you don't really want. Right. Like
some of them he wants, right. He does want to play. He does want, in the end, I think, look, yes, he's made some sort of livable life for himself on the streets. He does say he's been mugged 27 times. He's going to die earlier than he would die normally if he lives on the streets, right? It is just empirically a better life to have a roof over your head, have heat, have running water, be able to shower, be able to get a reliable intake of food, all of these things.
Well, how do you read the scene? There's a moment he gets in this apartment and it's, obviously not a beautiful place, but it's livable. And there's this moment where Downey's character kind of walks through there and like flushes the toilet and just kind of looking around. It's a silent moment. His face is kind of unreadable. And, my read of that is like, he's seeing that. It's like, maybe this isn't the greatest. This isn't the be all and end all. And like, I fought so hard to get him this. And is this really what he wants? And, that's an interesting idea. It's at least something interesting to put out there. But, by the end of this movie, it's like, no, this guy's a saint. He's doing the right thing. He just, as I said before, he doesn't change. He just course corrects a little bit. He just kind of shifts a little bit in one direction. And
yeah, no, I agree with you on the characterization aspect with Downey's character. I'm just saying, as a person, I think Nathaniel is probably empirically better off from a physical perspective by the end.
Of course.
That's what I mean. Like, and also he reconnects with his sister, so like that's good. He has family back in his life.
That's a nice moment too. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, but if the idea, again, not that this is like a very original concept or something that has been done in a million movies, but if you want to say about these two people and how they connect and how they sort of save each other or help each other or whatever, like, you need both of them to sort of like give something to the other that the other doesn't have, right? So Nathaniel, giving him would be more of a connection to like his spirit, to, letting go of the things he thinks are important that aren't really that important, and, for him it'd be like, well, but you gave up a lot because you were scared of, yourself or how you would react, but there's a way forward to this, right? And there are new ways for it. It's been 30 years since he was, since he kind of ran away or whatever, we can get you help, we can reconnect with your family. It's not over for you. You still have life to live, right? You don't have to think that your life is abandoned, right? And all the things you want are abandoned because of, this illness that you have, right? And I think you could make like at least a movie that I think would have more of a perspective and more of a impact if you did that, right? Instead of having all these other plot lines that don't connect at all to what's going on, instead of really kind of being a half-ass process movie at times and then a half-ass sort of weepy schmaltzy drama at times, and half-ass a comedy at times. It's just all of these things don't equal up to anything, you know? And I think that's really one of the big problems. Like you said, the physical altercation scenes, you know, what are you trying to tell me there? What are you trying to show me? Like the scene with, you know, Downey near the end when he wants him to sign the papers, you know, and he freaks out and he sort of like really attacks him. You know, it's like, it's almost like it's almost like a Harry and the Hendersons, like,
oh yeah, like that moment, right? He comes out of the bathroom and the papers are like very, very precisely kind of floating down through the air, like he just tossed them all over the place. Like, come on.
Yeah, and you know, and then we get the scene where the sister comes, and I do like that scene, so we all want to talk about that scene, but like the sort of, it's unresolved, right? Because he basically says, like, I'm not signing these papers. I don't want my sister anywhere near me. Get out of here. And then sort of like the next scene
Downey
is like,
drops her off there and says,
like, he's still doing
let me know how it goes.
He's still being like, I know better than you, Nathaniel. Here's your sister, you know? So
he just dumps her in his lap. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and what Keener says to him in that one scene is like, just be his friend, right? You know, just be his friend.
Yeah, he doesn't need you to save him. He just needs you to be his friend.
Yeah, and which a good message, right? That's a good message for this movie. But I don't feel like the filmmakers believe it.
No, that's the thing. And like,
you know?
and that is the thing. It's like it's doing that thing where the movie is expressing its core idea, its main theme, but then kind of like contradicting it every chance it gets. And I don't understand that.
Yeah, me too. That was my main thing with this movie, where I was just like, what are you? Like, what are you trying to tell me at any moment?
But I love the reconciliation with his sister because it's quiet and it's subtle. And the line, you know, at this point in the movie, it's like, okay, I can't be emotionally invested in this anymore. It's broken my heart too many times. Not in the way it wanted to, but just in the, or it's insulted my intelligence or something. But she sits down next to him and it's this, you know, kind of awkward moment. And they hold hands. And he said, we had some life, didn't we? And that line just broke me in fucking half.
Yeah.
And it's like one little moment at the end of the movie is like, wait a minute, do I like this movie? Like, I'm starting to get to a point, I don't know what it is, but I've been thinking this with a lot of things lately where, you know, movies are all about the moments and like little things like that sometimes can really redeem. So I don't think it does here, but like that's as close as something like that ever gets. I don't know what it even is about it. It was just very well played, not showy, nicely directed. That line is just so simple, but so profound, but like not in a, you know, we're swinging for the fences sort of way. And I love the way that's done. I love the close up of them holding hands. And it's like, you know, someone knows what they're doing here. And there was a way forward for this movie, I think.
Right. Because look, I think Joe Wright is a skilled director. I think he understands the language of
another
movies.
Handsomely mounted production.
It is very handsome. There was several times where I was like, that's a really nice shot. Like that looks really good.
Yeah.
He shoots LA really nicely. He plays with light really nicely. Compositions. You know, there's a scene where, you know, where they're in the tunnel together. And there's a sort of, again, it's a very obvious blocking, but I like it, is there's a lot of separation in like how they're feeling about the next step forward. And like Downey's very far away from him, you know, and it's sort of like they shoot it from like across the street or whatever. And it's just a really nicely composed, locked down frame. And I'm like, this looks really nice. And that scene, like you're saying before, I think the magic of it is it's two actors just being allowed to give performances without any other bullshit like happening around them. You know, just like, let's just lock in with two good performers who they found for themselves the emotional truth of whatever they're trying to do in this scene, right? And I think it just works because of that, right? And I also think like the performances work in the dialogue scene right after when they go back on the street and it's like him and Steve and he's like, you know, it's a moment where Foxx is playing it a little heightened, but not over the top. And so like, I can't believe you want to be friends with me or whatever. He's like, I honored to be your friend or whatever. And like, that got me a little bit. And I was like, I don't even I actively dislike this movie. And like that moment got me because Jamie Foxx is real good. Downey's real good. And it's just like, when I can lock in with those kind of people, I can drown out some of that noise, you know? But I agree with you, Nick. I think for me, especially as I've gotten a little bit older, or maybe just because we've watched so many movies and you've seen what a great movie is, you've seen what a bad movie is, and you don't put as much pressure on every movie to be perfect all the way through. I feel the same way. Sometimes I watch a movie and I'm like, that movie wasn't good. But you know what? There was like 3 things in that movie that kind of rocked, you know? And
Yeah,
like,
just a scene, an image, a moment, a line reading or something. I watched the other night, I've been wanting to see it for a while, Ethan Cohen's Driveway Dolls.
okay, how was that? I haven't seen it.
I enjoyed it, but
Yeah.
like, it's not a great movie. You know, it's,
Okay.
I think you go into it thinking this is a Cohen brother. It's going to be like, it's going to compete with the heavy hitters of the Coen brothers filmography, and it's not. And it's clearly not trying to. And it's him and his wife, Trisha Cook, I think her name is, who co-wrote it together, and supposedly she directed it too. And it was just a DGA thing that you know, he ended up being the sole filmmaker on it. But like, it's got some great moments. Like, there's some comedy in that movie that works really well. There's some scenes that are just kind of kinky and weird and over the top and stuff you don't see. Like, you know, sex is a thing that Coen brothers movies like really don't do much with.
Right. No.
It's an aspect of humanity that those movies kind of shy away from. And this movie just kind of like, I got to watch the expression. I was going to say dives in head first, which I guess is probably the exact right expression to use about this movie. But like some of that stuff in there, which is, you know, not something I go looking to a Coen brothers movie for. But yeah, like it's a solid movie in that it has moments. There are memorable things. Margaret Qualley is hilarious in it. And, you know, she's like the it person now.
She is right now. Yeah.
Is going to be in literally everything. But I really liked her. It's a very, you know, one of my favorite movies that I've definitely talked about before is Raising Arizona. And it's got a little bit of a Raising Arizona vibe about it. And, you know, nowhere near as good as that. But I sort of like those little parallels between this movie and that movie. So, yeah, I don't know. Man, like, I thought I'd be more cynical the older I got. And I think maybe I'm less cynical. I'm seeing these little things, you know, in these movies that are otherwise not that good. Yeah. And, you know, Driveway Dolls, it's very slight. It's 80 minutes long. It's the kind of thing, you know, it would have been direct to video in the 90s. And I kind of appreciated that quality about it.
Yeah. I mean, 80 minutes is the best review you could possibly give it for me. Like, I'll watch any movie that's 80 minutes long.
Overstay its welcome. Yeah.
No, definitely not. I watched Juror Number 2 the other day, the Clint Eastwood film with Nick Holt, who's having a hell of a 2024. I really liked it. It's a really fun, like, courtroom sort of thriller. Again, one of those movies that doesn't get made that much, you know, very much that often. It's got a premise that, like, is, do you know what it's about at all? I don't want to, if you're going to watch it.
I know that it's a courtroom movie. No, okay. Don't tell me that.
I won't tell you. But it's one of those premises where it strains, like, credulity in some places, but it's just, like, fun. Like, it's I never would expect this when I saw, like, the first trailer or, like, saw, like, the poster for it and this Clint Eastwood courtroom thing. Where I thought it was going to be very serious, you know.
Yeah, that's what I would have expected.
And it is serious. Don't get me wrong. He takes it very seriously. But it's a movie that kind of has rocks in its brains, but he really brings, like, a level of, like, credulity to that in ways that you would, like, only someone who's been making movies for, like, 70 years could possibly do, you know. And it's got really great, like, you know, just like, we're jurors in a room deliberating if this person's innocent or guilty scenes that are just a ton of fun. Great cast, like, you know, Toni Collette's in it, and Nick Holt, like I said, J.K. Simmons is in it. You know, it's got like a really fun, nice cast. And, you know, I found myself being like, you know what, if I saw this movie when I was 22, I would have been like, this is a stupid premise, you know, and have my arms crossed about it. And now I'm like, no, man, I'm in. Just put the quarter in the machine. I'm in for the ride. You know, get on that little mechanical bull and just, like, ride it the whole way through. Like, I had a great time watching it. So,
well, and that's the other side of this too, because there are so many movies that were made over and over and over again for the longest time, for our whole lives, basically. And then, like, the faucet just kind of got turned off. Yeah. Like, when's the last time there was a courtroom movie? I don't remember. You know, that wasn't like based on
Chicago 7.
But, you know, the courtroom movies now, like, they're something like that, right? It's like a political event or something, like, you know, it's a historical film. Whereas, you know, just a meat and potatoes, like, judge and jury sort of movie, like, you don't ever see those anymore. And for a while, it's like all you saw, you know, like, I haven't seen, I'm sure he's still alive. Like, does John Grisham still write novels?
He does. Yeah. And I think he just got back into writing courtroom stuff because he was off of that for a while. He was doing, like, I think, like, nonfiction stuff for a while and stuff.
Okay.
But he had a book come out recently, I think. But yeah, I mean, we grew up in the era, right, when we were kids, it was like,
He was like the biggest author in the world.
It was like the MCU.
And it's like every one of them, got made into a movie. Some of them good, some of them fair. Your juror, or not the juror, the client and the Pelican Brief and shit like that. I enjoyed those movies.
The Firm. These are all huge movies, right? Huge blockbusters.
The Coppola one?
Oh, The Rainmaker.
The Rainmaker, yeah.
Like most Coppola movies in the modern era, made no money at all, was a huge bomb, but that's actually a pretty good movie. That's a good movie.
See it.
A good movie. Good movie. An early-ish Matt Damon picture, that one. But yeah, like
Matt Damon also very fun in Drive Away Dolls. Not in it for very long, but
I mean that's a Damon special, right? Like he'll just show up for a couple minutes and give you a little something, which I think is great. But yeah, like I said, like that music scene, like the synesthesia scene, like you mentioned, truly, I was like, this belongs in a better movie. That's how I felt about it. You know what I mean? And little moments like that, like that's, when I talk about movies like this now, that's what I would mention. I would say there's a couple of moments, a scene like that, and the performances are really good. Like, I wouldn't recommend you watch it necessarily, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there's nothing about it that was worthwhile, because there is stuff about it that's worthwhile. It's just the overall sort of recipe and soup is not worthwhile.
But going back to like the first thing I said about it, they're two great actors. They're both incredibly likable and charismatic. They are both they're taking this seriously. You don't have to love the performances, but you can tell this isn't just a paycheck for them. This isn't just like, I'm being this character. And I mean, you could easily say that about Robert Downey Jr. often. I think, once he sort of establishes this Tony Stark sort of persona, he's just doing that basically all the time. And he kind of is here, but like there are shades to it. I think it's a little bit more interesting than if he was just kind of Robert Downey Jr.ing his way through this entire thing. He
had to be making this movie before Iron Man came out, Like this movie, the Iron Man comes out in the summer of 2008. So this movie is supposed to come out a couple of months after Iron Man, so he's doing this, I think, probably off of getting Iron Man, right?
Sure.
And probably people have seen the dailies, people have seen the trailer maybe, or whatever, or have heard like the sort of, patter about it, but he's not getting this, getting this part as super duper movie star, Robert Downey Jr., which I'm sure people were like, when Iron Man hit like it did, people were like, oh man, Soloist is gonna fucking Rainmaker in the box office, because he makes Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005, right, and that sort of like brings him back, right? It's like, okay, oh, Robert Downey Jr., right, really good actor, because people have forgotten, because all of the stuff in the news and stuff like that, and his legal troubles, his problem with substance abuse had overridden the fact that he was this sort of genius wonderkind when he first started,
Yeah.
He does Good Night and Good Luck the same year he does Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Obviously, it's not a huge part in that, but he's very good in that, right? I mean, he does A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. He's in that.
Oh, I like that movie a lot. Have you ever seen that?
I did, but in 2006. So ask me to remember anything about it, and I couldn't remember a single moment about it. He's in...
That's a career that went nowhere. That Ditto Montiel is the guy made it about himself. It's his own story.
Yeah.
I saw that movie and I was like, this guy's got something. And never really made anything else that was of note.
The Shaggy Dog also comes out in 2006, which is a movie that he was making before, I think, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is this like Disney, everything. Skinner Darkly comes out in 2006.
He's great in that.
Another like...
to the extent that he's in it.
Yeah. Another little indie, not huge financial success, but something that, again, just building this like, oh, he's kind of back, right? Yep. I believe at this point, we've already... Iron Man's already been cast, right? He's already been cast as Iron Man while these parts are coming out. Everyone knows he's going to be Iron Man by the time like this is happening. Zodiac comes out in 2007, which is just, I think, one of the great American films. I mean that truly. He's got little parts in like Charlie Bartlett and stuff like that, which is a fun, like kind of Ferris Bueller-ish movie. And then Iron Man hits in 2008. And 2008, he has Iron Man, Tropic Thunder, both of them in 2008, which is just insane, right? An insane 2008 for a person to have. Then The Soloist comes out in 2009, right? Right before Sherlock Holmes comes out. And then after that, it's like Iron Man 2, He does that comedy Due Date with Zach Galifianakis, which I saw once in 2010, never again
Nothing
since.
about it. Yeah.
He does the Sherlock Holmes sequel, and then he's really not doing anything else except for Marvel movies. He does Chef with Jon Favreau, which is a really good movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie before. And he does The Judge, which is basically like The Soloist, where it's like one of these movies where it's like, this movie is supposed to be a serious Oscar-winning drama, and it is one of the most internal movies I've ever seen in my life. I think it gets Duvall Oscar nomination, though. And then after 2014, he doesn't do another non-Marvel movie until he does Doolittle in 2020, which is a crazy flop, right?
Which I think was shot way before 2020, but yeah.
It was probably was shot way before 2020. I mean, it was a big effects movie, right? So I'm sure it got shot, and then effects are going on. And then really it's Oppenheimer after that. So like he doesn't really, it's so funny because he didn't really decide to go like, he didn't go like, okay, I'm going to be Tony Stark and then I'm going to use it to do all these kind of whatever part comes my way. He just goes, I did Sherlock Holmes. I'm doing this. After that, I'm just going to do this until I'm like ready to, do my next thing after this, And when he does that, he wins an Oscar, which is crazy,
It's great. Great.
Oh, he's unbelievable in that movie. Just a fascinating career for him. I think he did the smart thing, right? I think he didn't do the Johnny Depp thing, which was to basically go like, I'm in this incredibly popular franchise and I'm just going to overexpose myself in everything, right? The thing that people loved about me is the thing that people hate about me, right? Which is that I just can't do a fucking normal performance ever. I just have to always be with like weird teeth and like really pale and like crazy hair, all that stuff. Like, I think Downey intentionally kind of like was like, I'm not doing that, right? I'm not going to do that. So really interesting career.
He's always felt to me like the thinking person's franchise star,
Oh,
like
yeah, for sure.
I believe him. I don't love the Marvel movies, but one of my favorites certainly is the original Iron Man. And I think what he's brought to that franchise is just like, it never would have been what it was without him.
No.
It's because he's not, he's a little bit off kilter. He's a little bit.
He is. Yeah.
He's not your typical movie star, but he's also just like pure charisma and that sort of wit that he has. And look, stupid people like me find his characters very witty and enjoy movies like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. He's I don't know exactly how to describe it.
I adore Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Just so you know, just so you're aware. You're not alone on that fact.
Okay.
And I adore Robert Downey Jr. I think he's just like kind of unbelievable, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think also that part of him, the other thing he was very smart about, and I think it came from a true place, but was also, he's very good about keeping this a public persona, which was, he was like, look, I love doing these movies. I think they're great. Like, and I'm not ashamed of them. I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, but I'm also doing a serious movie. I'm not going to be that guy.
Because you do get a lot of that.
You do get a lot of that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with people who want to do, look, I think if you're a real like serious actor who wants to do like challenging work, I think it's a great idea to be like, I'll do these big movies so that I can go do this little movie and I don't have to worry about it, how much money it makes. I don't have to worry about
I get what you're saying. You can't go back and shit on the blockbuster movies. They bought you a house or something.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
And I remember there's this famous story when Downey was like trying to get Gwyneth Paltrow to do Iron Man. And she's like, I don't know. Like, I don't want to really do these kind of movies. And he's like, Gwyneth, you do all these great movies that nobody sees. He's like, wouldn't it be great to just for once be in a movie that's really good that everybody sees? And she was like, she's like, that convinced me, because that's the reason he said he was wanted to do it. He's like, I could go.
And she's a lot of fun in those movies.
She is a lot of fun in those movies. The
two of them are great together.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's just, like you said, he's just really good at being the thinking man's sort of, movie star. And everything is just there's a little bit of spin on the ball with everything that he says and he does.
For sure.
So you're never like, oh, this is just like boring. You're never like, this is boring when he's talking. You're like, what is he going to say next? What is he going to do next? How is he going to react when this coyote urine pours into his mouth?
I mean, I don't like the scene, but I like what he brings to so many. I mean, there are some big dramatic moments in this movie that he sort of like nicely undercuts, because I mean, this pushes so far towards schmaltz, but he's as I keep saying, because of the way he reacts to things and because he never lets a scene completely tip over into that. And Does he ever cry in this movie? I don't think he does.
Not really. And he does that thing which he's so good at, which is like everything but crying, right? You can just see his eyes are glassy.
Yeah. But you never see that big, huge emoting scene. He never is breaking things, throwing things. You know, he never like goes over the top with the anger. And I don't know. It's imagine how bad this movie would be if someone bland and someone very earnest was cast in this very earnest story and just had to play it all very, very earnestly. Like, I don't know if I could have gotten through 2 hours of this. I am, that is a thing that really, I have a problem with it. I don't like schmaltzy movies. I don't like tearjerkers. I don't like melodrama. I like movies that affect me that are not, you know, I cry every time I see Raising Arizona. So that's not a heavy movie dramatically, but you know, when I'm caught off guard by something like that, I really feel it very strongly. When a movie is just like bashing me over the head, you know, I call it tragedy porn. I hate that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree.
And this movie so easily could have been that. And I think he's the thing that really saves it from being that.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like who that actor would be that's like in his age range that would be, you know, obviously
I was thinking about that. And if I could have thought of someone, I would have said who, I mean.
Like I'm trying to think people who are at his level, right? But like it's kind of like, you know, Brad Pitt would have been boring as sin in a movie like this. Like this is the kind of movie he was always terrible in, you know.
Cruise,
Cruise was absolutely wrong person for this because you've been like, man, this guy's a psycho. What's he even doing? You know, I don't even think like this is the kind of role that like Clooney, I think would even like not be able to really bring a ton to, right?
Yeah.
An actor I absolutely, when he's in movie star mode, I think I like great.
Him too. And he can do that sort of witty, you know, that like banter, that back and forth thing too.
Yeah.
But I don't think he would have worked here either.
Like Matt Damon would have been, you know, like he just would have, I think he would have gone fully into like the schmaltz sort of like, you know, section of this. Yeah. So like those kind of people who are all good actors, right? Who can be really good in stuff.
Yeah. Who we really like in other things.
Yeah. Like, you know, you need somebody that's like, you know, not to keep it on the Shane Black sort of like family, but like Gosling would have been someone who would, I think, could have done this similarly to way that, you know, Downey does it. You know, I think he has those abilities. He's different, but he also has those abilities, you know? So someone had gone too far in the direction, maybe a Jeff Goldblum too far in the other direction, you know?
Then it would have just been two mentally ill people just kind of yakking back and forth through a lot of this movie. I don't know if that would have worked. But you know what? I would have watched it.
Oh, I would have loved it because every time Jeff Goldblum speaks, I don't care. I'm like, yep. I watched him in that terrible Jurassic World movie, the last one, where it really felt like he had never seen a script and he was just sort of like just going, just like riffing all his lines. And I was like, this is the only thing that's even worthwhile at all in this movie. So that's the thing. That movie's terrible, not worthwhile at all. Jeff Goldblum is great in it. So that's what I would tell people. Have you seen any of those movies, the Jurassic World movies?
Yeah, I saw Jurassic World and I saw the was it Fallen Kingdom?
That's the second one? The second one? Yeah. So
there's been 3 now? Yeah.
I've seen the first one. I saw the third one. I didn't see the second one.
Well, you're not missing anything.
I got dragged to the third one by friends who were like, we're going to go see this movie, whatever. So I went to see it with them.
Fallen Kingdom has a very fun opening sequence. And then it like the levels of stupid that movie hits, I was like, I literally can't believe that this got out the door of a Hollywood studio. And like, you know, they make pretty stupid movies on that level, but it might be the dumbest movie I've ever seen, ever.
So in that movie, right, all the dinosaurs are no longer in Jurassic Park. They're all over the world now.
No, and Fallen Kingdom was the story of how that happened.
No, I know. I'm just saying.
Fucking ridiculous. But yeah, so it like, and what we thought was, or what I thought at the time was, okay, this movie's dumb as dirt, but like, at least we're going to get like this concluding film in that trilogy that's like, all right, dinosaurs are part of life now. What the fuck are we going to do? And so I hear that third movie doesn't really do that at all.
No, there are some moments, right? There are some moments where you're like, oh, this is, especially near the opening, we're like,
it was all in the trailer.
Yeah. Like, oh, this is cool. Like, you know, how would people handle this? And like, yeah, there would definitely be people who like tried to take advantage of it, who like tried to use them, like would, you know, put them in cages and try to use them for, you know, nefarious purposes. And there would be people who would try to break them out or whatever. You know, there's this kind of thing that's going on.
You know, you actually should see Fallen Kingdom. Like the whole movie kind of revolves around like a dinosaur auction. So like very, very rich people, you know, your Bezoses and Elon Musks and folk like that. They gather at this very gothic castle shot, you know, like a Universal horror movie. Yeah. And they like bid on dinosaurs.
I mean, that sounds rad.
It does, but it's...
I'm sure. It's so weird because that's J.A. Bayona, right? Who made that movie, right? Who's like an interesting, fun horror director.
Yeah.
And Colin Trevorrow, who made 1 and 3, has never made an interesting movie in his life. But like that. So the third one, they do this thing where they have like, okay, we got the original 3. So Laura Dern, Sam Neill, and Jeff Goldblum are all in it. And there's a moment where they're separate the whole movie, and then for the last like 45 minutes, they kind of they all get together in the same place. And they get reunited, and the same moment, like, you know, fucking Owen Grady or whatever the fuck Chris Pratt's name is, and yeah. And the Bryce Dallas Howard character, and then some other character I don't even remember, also like get reunited, and they try to play it like your favorite 2 sets of 3 people. And I'm like, nobody cares about these 3 people. They only care about the other 3 people. So they play that one, which is so stupid. And then I hate the fucking raptor training thing. I hate it because it's like, the whole point of the raptors is supposed to be the scariest things in the world. You make them not scary. Whatever. There's this one raptor he can like train or whatever. Fine. He has one. They go to this, like, it's sort of like we were talking about, but it's like a black market dinosaur trade or whatever. And there are raptors, and they like intentionally let them out because they want to like disturb like what's going on. And one of them goes for Owen Grady, and he puts his hand up to stop him, and the thing stops.
Oh, he's the raptor whisperer.
And I'm like, he doesn't know this raptor. I wanted every raptor now in their genetic code knows if Owen Grady puts his hand up, they have to stop. I'm like, this is so stupid. And then there's like a Bourne Identity chase through the streets of Morocco.
Yeah, like every review kind of mentioned that with raptors involved. It's like, well, we've gone far. But like,
literally, there's that Bourne Ultimatum's shot where, you know, that famous shot where he like jumps over the balcony and through the window, and like the cameraman jumped behind him, which is such a cool shot in Bourne Ultimatum. They do that shot in Jurassic World Dominion, I think is the third one. They like behind the back in the raptor when he's like jumping through a window. I'm like, this is ridiculous. Anyway, what were you going to say?
I don't remember. Okay. Like the stupidity has clouded my mind.
Yeah. Though I got to say, the new one that's coming out this year, I'm a little bit interested in it.
I can't believe it's coming so hot on the heels of that one, which nobody seemed to like. Or maybe that's why.
I think that's why. So it's Jonathan Bailey, who's coming off Wicked, and it's Scarlett Johansson. Rupert Friend's in it. Mahershala Ali's in it. And it's directed by Gareth Edwards, the guy who made Godzilla and Rogue One.
Monsters, which is really
Monsters, good. And the creator most recently. All movies that I'm like kind of mixed on for the most part, but really cool visually and have some like cool ideas, right? They're actually, there's like a sci-fi mind behind them that cares about that stuff. You know, it isn't just like, well, this guy made a $5 million indie movie that people kind of liked, so now make them the director of this giant franchise that they have no connection to.
Monsters was a blockbuster movie on like a, Happy Meal budget, and it was really good.
So I'm kind of interested in that movie.
Again.
Kind of interested in that movie, so we'll see about that. But all right, so we're going to get out of here. We talked long enough about not stuff that isn't The Soloist.
That's what we were talking about.
I mean, to be fair, I think this will be the favorite part, people's favorite part of the episode.
Like the good news is I don't feel like we've offended the cadre of hardcore Soloist fans out there.
No, I don't think so. Though if anybody's going to find this podcast, it's them.
Soloistas.
Yeah. Because they're like, man, someone's talking about The Soloist. I can't wait. And I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. But next time, we're talking about Hannah, his action picture with reuniting him with
Saoirse Ronan.
Eric Bana's up in this bitch. Kate Blanchett, I believe, is in this movie, right?
Yeah, she's the villain.
Yeah, she's like the villain of it. So cool. I saw this once back in 2011. I really liked it in 2011. I haven't watched it since.
Yeah,
I'm very much hoping I still really like it. I'll put that right there. You know, I have this feeling where I'm like, nobody really talks about it anymore. So like, is it actually bad? And I just really was like really wanting to like it in 2011. You know, we'll see. They did make a TV show.
It's super high concept, right?
It is.
It's a young girl who's like your action hero in it, which is not something you usually see, and that gets you a lot of credit.
Yes,
just for doing something like that. But yeah, we'll see.
And then once we're past Hannah, we're out of my familiarity with Joe Wright's oeuvre. So we'll see how the rest of those movies go. But you can check out the show on intrepidfilmographers.com. You can do all the podcasts there. You can subscribe there. Obviously, you can subscribe on any of your podcast platforms of choice. Please leave us reviews if on any of whatever platform you use. Rate and review us. It really, really, really helps. You can, of course, if you want to email us and give us some feedback or, give us ideas for directors to cover anything like that, intrepidfilmographers@gmail.com. But until next time, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Bobby.
And until next time, thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.